The servo-skull's picked recorder captures everything with mechanical precision. Its single crimson ocular lens dilates as the branding iron, heated to exactly 847 degrees Celsius, presses into flesh with a hiss that drowns out whispered prayers. Steam rises from the wound, carrying the acrid scent of cauterized skin and sanctified metal. This is not the twisted mark of chaos corruption or the scarification of a recidivist. The brand burns an inverted aquila deep into the chest of Commissar Thane Mordant, 15th Vostroyan Firstborn, wings pointing downward, talons grasping nothing. His crime: loyalty beyond acceptable parameters. The iron lifts, revealing seared flesh marked with the sigil of the procedural deviant. The servo-skull records the brand's precise dimensions, transmits data to 17 archives, and calculates healing time with actuarial efficiency. Even punishment follows documentation protocols. We transition to the Tribunal Majoris on Hive Chronos, where Gothic buttresses frame cogitator banks and incense mingles with the metallic tang of fresh wounds. Here, loyalty is not virtue, but a filing category with lethal margins of error. Scribes calculate guilt with the devotion their ancestors reserved for prayer, processing faith through bureaucratic machinery that transforms the faithful into the suspect. Commissar Mordaunt stands condemned under Administratum Edict 77 Kappa, unauthorized initiative in service of the throne. His service record spans 43 years of mathematical perfection. 2 Splinter Fleet incursions repulsed, 8 mutiny seeds cut before sprouting, 17 battlefield commendations earned through measured heroism. His destruction begins with a form and a clock. During the siege of Kalos Prime, cultists breached the Shrine District while civilians fled through evacuation corridors. Mordant filed requisition, Storm-Blessed 447 for ammunition resupply, then calculated that the verification protocol's mandatory 3-minute processing window would cost 12,000 souls. He ordered bayonet charges without authorization. The shrine held. The paperwork did not arrive until 3 minutes after his decision, becoming evidence of his procedural heresy. The verification protocol creates windows of legal paralysis between petition and approval. In those sanctified minutes, action becomes presumption, and presumption becomes guilt. The system transforms life-saving decisions into capital offenses, measuring devotion in decimal points and processing virtue through administrative machinery. Statistical analysis provides chilling context. Of 1,247 loyalty trials processed through segmentum solar tribunals in the past audit cycle, 1,203 resulted in punitive sentences equivalent to heresy convictions. The conviction rate approaches mathematical perfection, 96.47%. These numbers represent no malfunction of imperial justice. The machinery operates exactly as designed. The tribunal's arithmetic replaces testimony, quill adepts, tallyvox confirmations, while servitors seal exhibits with rubber tongues. Data priests bless delays as safeguards, their bone keys tapping over humming cogitators. Excellence breeds deviation flags. Initiative threatens chain integrity. The machine does not malfunction. It consumes by design. Mordant's inverted aquila marks him as one who loved the throne too directly, without mediation by the offices standing between subject and sovereign. Outside, the hive's exhaust snow falls in greasy flakes. Inside, the edict grinds forward like rust, demonstrating that faith must be timed, tallied, and stamped, or it becomes indistinguishable from rebellion. Faith, in the 41st millennium, is not a feeling, but a formula. The Departamento Munitorum does not trust eyes or hymns, it trusts numbers. The Loyalitas Index reduces divine devotion to mathematical certainty, converting the immeasurable human heart into data points that can be stored, queried, and punished. Built by Lex Mechanics and blessed by confessors militant, This algorithm promises control in a galaxy where certainty is the rarest commodity. The index tallies inputs that appear pious on parchment but prove weaponized in practice. Prayer frequency coefficients measure litanies per shift, adjusted for fatigue, and sanctioned holidays. Catechism recall accuracy, scored by Auspex microphones. Tithe punctuality and surplus offerings, confession regularity and sermon attendance. Then the Marshall variables, casualty acceptance rates, obedience latency to orders, and the tactical initiative penalties that subtract points whenever commanders act before authorization arrives. The machine calls this prudence. Soldiers call it waiting to die. The algorithm operates on a 10-point scale, but only 0.8 points separate salvation from damnation. Scores between 7.3 and 8.1 constitute the Goldilocks zone of acceptable loyalty, dependably faithful without dangerous excess. Below 7.3 triggers automatic heresy investigations, interrogations, purity checks, and the grinding machinery of suspicion. Above 8.1 activates excessive zeal protocols, surveillance, doctrinal audits, and presumptions of theatrical performance. In the index's theology, perfection becomes a mask that only heretics wear. We observe Scribe Assessor Vex in Assessment Chamber Gamma 7, her stylus tapping across blessed calculation beads while servo skulls project hololithic displays of Commissar Mordaunt's service record. 43 years of mathematical perfection flows through the cogitator, prayer coefficient elevated by verified dawn and vesper attendance during campaigns. Combat effectiveness rating, 9.1 for tactical innovations, reduced by 1.7 for unauthorized initiative beyond approved parameters. Devotional consistency, perfect 10.0, mathematically adjusted to 7.4 for statistical impossibility suggesting calculated performance. The arithmetic reveals its cruel logic. Genuine faith creates anomalies that trigger suspicion. Perfect attendance suggests obsessive behavior. Tactical brilliance implies dangerous independence. Unwavering loyalty becomes evidence of sophisticated deception. The algorithm cannot distinguish between authentic devotion and heretical calculation, so it treats both as equally threatening. Mordaunt's lifetime of flawless service produces a final score of 8.7. Well beyond acceptable parameters, damning him through mathematical perfection. This introduces procedural orthodoxy, the theological principle that proper faith must follow approved channels and timing. Spontaneous devotion threatens institutional control. Calculated piety maintains bureaucratic order. The faithful must learn to love the emperor through proper forms, at designated intervals, with appropriate documentation. Faith without paperwork becomes heresy without trial. Our investigation unfolds through three analytical lenses. First, we examine the daily reality of measured devotion, how citizens navigate existence when every prayer undergoes mathematical surveillance. Second, we dissect control mechanisms that enforce compliance, the verification protocol, assessment quotas, and bureaucratic machinery transforming virtue into vice. Finally, we confront the spiritual cost of quantified faith, the psychological toll when divine love becomes statistical data. The Loyalitas Index embodies the Imperium's fundamental assumption that human hearts can be measured, cataloged, and controlled through proper methodology. Excellence breeds suspicion in the Imperium's calculus of control. Three servants discover that competence itself becomes criminal when it exceeds statistical norms, transforming institutional loyalty into evidence of institutional threat. Supervisor Daric Pell operates Pressline Gamma in Manufactorum Delta 9, stamping LASPAC casings by the million. His innovations appear modest: recalibrated feed rates, staggered meal breaks, teaching crews to recognize the pitch shift before cog seizure. Output rises 23% in a single quartile. The productivity cogitator flags suspicious efficiency suggesting unauthorized process modification. An assessment bureau auditor arrives with purity counters and questions wrapped in gratitude. How did you discover this method? Who authorized the changes? Why conceal success for 3 rotation cycles? Honest answers become trapdoors. Pell explains he acted to meet quotas and protect workers' fingers. The transcript records independent thinking, procedural deviation, and possible concealment of capabilities. His devotional correction: reduce initiative displays by prescribed margins. Sister Meridian maintains vigil at the Shrine of Blessed Martyrs, her prayer duration averaging 14.7 hours daily, 3.2 hours above diocesan norms. Auspex microphones record every litany, calculating frequency coefficients and cross-referencing against approved texts. The devotional algorithm assigns variance scores. Excessive love registers as statistical outlier. During loyalty review, confessor-assessor Thorne questions each prayer. Sister, why exceed prescribed minimums? Are you compensating for hidden guilt? Her fervent devotion becomes evidence of theatrical performance. Faith transforms into proof of faithlessness through mathematical analysis. Commissar Thane Mordaunt faces the dilemma's deadliest iteration during the siege of Kalos Prime. Cultist infiltrators breach the Shrine District while 12,000 civilians flood evacuation corridors. Protocol 15. Tertius mandates. Initiative requires verification through proper channels. Mordaunt submits requisition Storm Blessed 447 for ammunition resupply, then calculates that verification processing will consume 3 minutes, enough time for cultists to reach the escape routes and slaughter thousands. He redirects 3 companies without authorization, establishing defensive positions that save every civilian life. The Assessment Bureau's post-action review transforms heroism into procedural heresy. Mordaunt's tactical brilliance becomes unauthorized command assumption. His life-saving decision becomes dangerous independence, indicating compromised judgment. The algorithm processes results, 12,000 lives preserved, as irrelevant compared to bureaucratic compliance failures. Assessment methods operate through devotional algorithms flagging outliers, productivity metrics identifying suspicious efficiency, and behavioral pattern analysis, detecting independent thinking. Every citizen generates monitored data streams, prayer frequencies, work output, confession regularity, social interactions. Cogitators process this information, identifying deviations from approved statistical norms. The requisition form provides damning evidence. Storm Blessed 4. 47 submitted at 14:23 hours. Verification completed at 14:26 hours. Bayonet charge commenced at 14:24 hours. 1 minute of unauthorized action becomes mathematical proof of procedural deviation. The system transforms mercy into presumption, and presumption into capital offense. 3 cases. 1 lesson. In systems worshipping averages, excellence appears as knife-edge deviation requiring correction. The verification protocol is not mere procedure. It is creed incarnate, transforming administrative delay into theological virtue. Ostensibly designed to prevent imposture and maintain sacred command hierarchies, the protocol functionally creates windows of legal paralysis where life-saving decisions become capital offenses. In an empire where authority flows through proper channels or not at all, the machinery transforms mercy into presumption with mathematical precision. Every action under imperial authority requires triune verification before implementation. Local command approval confirms tactical necessity and immediate resource availability. Departamento Munitorum, resource authorization, validates supply chain logistics and budgetary compliance. Through blessed ledgers, Commissaria doctrinal clearance ensures theological orthodoxy and morale implications align with approved catechisms. Each tier operates independently, preventing streamlined processing even during crisis scenarios where seconds determine survival. Standard verification processing consumes 4 to 7 minutes under optimal conditions, an eternity when enemy blades approach civilian throats. During this sanctified lag, field officers face absolute prohibition against independent action. The protocol's theological foundation rests on the principle that unauthorized initiative, regardless of outcome, represents presumption against the Emperor's will as expressed through proper administrative channels. To act without clearance becomes procedural heresy, equivalent to doctrinal deviation. The trap's elegant cruelty emerges through impossible mathematics. Emergency situations demand immediate response, but taking action without verification constitutes criminal offense. Officers must choose, act and face tribunal prosecution, or wait while innocents die during paperwork processing. Either choice generates evidence for prosecution. Inaction becomes dereliction of duty. Action becomes unauthorized presumption. Cogitator networks processing verification requests operate through Vox relays and data looms, feeding sector hubs. Litanies of transmission persuade reluctant machine spirits to pass packets intact through blessed channels. During routine operations, the queue remains manageable. Crisis scenarios create system overload that extends lag times exponentially. Broken relays mean requests persist but cannot resolve, creating Schrödinger's permission, both pending and fatal. Commissar Mordaunt's case crystallizes the protocol's systematic cruelty. During the siege of Kalos Prime, his ammunition request triggered standard verification at 14:23 hours. Enemy fire disabled the primary Vox relay at 14:24, severing communication with verification networks. Secondary relay activation required 3 minutes minimum, time unavailable, while cultists advanced through evacuation corridors toward 12,000 civilians. Mordaunt calculated the impossible choice: wait for verification while civilians died, maintaining procedural orthodoxy through passive complicity in massacre, or act immediately, saving lives through unauthorized initiative that violated sacred administrative protocols. He ordered bayonet charges without authorization, establishing defensive positions that preserved every civilian life. The verification system recorded his decision as procedural heresy. Storm Blessed 447 received final clearance at 14:26 hours, 2 minutes after unauthorized action commenced. The temporal gap became mathematical evidence of presumptuous independence, transforming heroism into criminal deviation through bureaucratic arithmetic. Post-action analysis revealed the trap's systematic design. The protocol creates scenarios where faithful servants must violate either moral imperative or bureaucratic compliance, ensuring that excellence generates prosecutable evidence regardless of outcome. The Assessment Bureau operates as the Imperium's spiritual abacus, where devotion dies by mathematical degrees. Vox abaci click like rosaries, while columns of numbers advance in solemn procession across blessed cogitator screens. Above every workstation, a gilt maxim sanctifies the daily labor: faith without measure is faith without meaning. The motto provides psychological shelter from recognizing that assessors systematically destroy what they claim to protect. Assessor Prime. Vex opens file. Mordaunt. Thane. Segmentum Solar. Tribunal Majoris Chronos. The hololith blooms with a life reduced to entries: campaign dates, casualty ratios, catechism scores, verification timestamps. She reads as a mortician examines a cadaver, taking measurements the living no longer own. Her stylus passes through the beads of a calculus rosary, each click assigning weight to virtue or vice. Prayer coefficient, verified at dawn and vesper for 12 consecutive campaigns, adjusted for fatigue and travel conditions. Combat effectiveness, consistently exceptional across 4 decades of service. Devotional consistency, perfect adherence to catechisms, litanies, and observances. Initiative penalty, -1.7, applied for redirection of 3 companies during Kalos Prime. without triune clearance. Each positive metric becomes negative evidence through algorithmic inversion. The mathematics cannot admit that perfection might be sincere. Mordant's final loyalitas. Index tallies at 8.7 out of 10.0. Vex pauses, knowing the cruel mathematics. Scores above 8.1 activate excessive zeal protocols. An infiltrator calibrating a false life would aim for 7.6 to 7.9, the safe plateau where audits rarely bite. An 8.7 represents statistical impossibility for calculated performance. Yet precisely this mathematical proof of innocence triggers investigation protocols. Detachment becomes a survival tax levied on those operating the system. Last audit cycle, Vex discovered her brother's variance, 8.4, driven by pilgrim vigils between grain silo shifts. Duty required his denunciation. She logged the assessment personally, her stylus steady while grief calcified into professional numbness. He now serves as Servitor Unit Clerical 23, his personality surgically extracted while muscle memory preserves filing efficiency. Monthly quota meetings reveal the system's financial imperatives. Each bureau must produce minimum deviation yields, no less than 3.2% of reviewed cases escalated to tribunal, to secure parchment allotments and cogitator hours. Director Assessor Kane reviews statistics with bureaucratic satisfaction. Offices exceeding quotas receive expanded authority, while those failing face staff. Reductions. The machine rewards detection over discernment, creating institutional incentives for finding heresy and heroism. Assessors develop linguistic anesthetics to process their daily destruction of the faithful. They speak of statistical anomalies rather than innocent citizens, deviation correction rather than persecution, loyalty optimization rather than systematic paranoia. Language protects them from recognizing their role in consuming the Imperium's most devoted servants. Vex applies procedural orthodoxy, the doctrine that devotion flows only through approved channels and timeframes. Mordant's perfect service record becomes evidence of elaborate theatrical performance spanning 4 decades. She stamps the escalation wafer, authorizing tribunal prosecution. In the margin, she writes and immediately scratches out, 8.7 is innocence, expressed in the only language allowed. The Tribunal Majoris Chamber embodies the Imperium's transformation of justice into liturgical accounting. Gothic arches soar above cogitator banks, their stone angels weeping binary tears, while incense mingles with the acrid smell of parchment and institutional fear. Servo skulls drift like mechanical cherubim, their crimson lenses recording testimony that will become statistical data. Stained glass windows depict the Emperor's glory, but hololithic projectors cast shadows of numbers across sacred light. Devotion reduced to decimal points. Commissar Thane Mordant stands in the penitent's dock, still wearing his greatcoat but stripped of rank insignia. The brass aquila, torn from his collar, leaves pale fabric beneath, a ghost of authority that no longer protects him. His posture remains parade ground perfect, 43 years of discipline refusing to bend before institutional betrayal. The inverted aquila branded on his chest marks him as loyalty's casualty. Tribunal Assessor Kane rises with mortician's precision, his voice carrying the detached authority of mathematical certainty. The accused presents a loyalitas index of 8.7, a statistical impossibility for genuine faith. Only calculated deception spanning decades could achieve such consistent performance metrics. The prosecution's case unfolds through algorithmic theology that transforms virtue into evidence of sophisticated heresy. Each heroic act undergoes systematic recontextualization through bureaucratic alchemy. Mordant's evacuation of 12,000 civilians becomes prioritizing local concerns over imperial strategic doctrine, indicating compromised judgment regarding resource allocation. His tactical innovations, the Mordant maneuver that saved 3 regiments during the Genna campaign, become dangerous independence, suggesting failure to follow established doctrine. His perfect knowledge of the Tactica Imperialis becomes obsessive behavior indicating mental instability or ideological contamination. The prosecution introduces Exhibit Tertius, Requisition Form, Storm Blessed 447. The timestamp glows accusatory crimson, submitted at 14:23 hours, approved at 14:26 hours, while unauthorized bayonet charges commenced at 14:24 hours. Kane's stylus traces the temporal gap like a pathologist identifying cause of death. Here stands the crime, initiative without verification. Whatever the outcome, the act represents presumption against the throne's appointed channels. Defense advocate Thorne attempts theological argument. The accused preserved the shrine of blessed martyrs and saved 12,000 imperial citizens. Mathematics remain unmoved. Kane responds with bureaucratic finality. Outcome cannot justify procedural violation. The protocol exists to prevent unauthorized presumption, regardless of apparent benefit. The climactic moment arrives when Mordant requests permission to speak. Granted, he recites the Commissar's creed from memory, his voice unwavering despite facing institutional destruction. It is better to die for the Emperor than live for yourself. Blessed is the mind too small for doubt. Each word carries 4 decades of absolute belief, delivered with parade ground precision. The tribunal records this display as excessive familiarity with doctrine, suggesting rehearsed performance designed to manipulate assessment outcomes. His genuine faith, the very quality that made him exemplary, seals his conviction through mathematical analysis, incapable of distinguishing authentic devotion from calculated deception. Tribunal Prime Voss delivers verdict with liturgical solemnity. Guilty of procedural heresy, statistical deviation, and unauthorized competence. Sentence: servitorization. The machine consumes its own heart and calls it justice. The verdict crystallizes institutional logic that transforms the Imperium's greatest virtue into its most dangerous liability. Commissar Thane Mordaunt stands convicted under 3 charges that redefine excellence as criminal deviation. Procedural heresy, violating verification protocols by acting during the 3-minute authorization window. Statistical deviation, achieving a loyalitas index of 8.7, exceeding acceptable parameters for quantified devotion. Unauthorized competence, tactical success achieved through independent decision-making rather than approved command structures. The sentence: servitorization, typically reserved for apostates and recidivists, signals that perfect loyalty receives punishment equivalent to active rebellion. The tribunal's reasoning reveals systematic paranoia elevated to theological principle. Tribunal Prime Voss articulates the verdict's foundation during post-session analysis. Genuine faith represents statistical rarity across the Imperium's billions. When exceptional devotion appears with mathematical consistency, it suggests sophisticated deception, chaos corruption, Xenos influence, or heretical infiltration, masquerading as loyalty. Only mediocrity can be trusted, because only mediocrity can be measured, controlled, and predicted through bureaucratic machinery. The Mordant precedent enters Imperial jurisprudence as Case Code Lex Chronos 8.7, establishing that exceptional loyalty constitutes prima facie evidence of deception. Within standard processing cycles, scribe adepts produce red-line addenda to the judge's manual incorporating the precedent as foundational doctrine. Training hololiths distribute Mordant's case file as cautionary exhibit, teaching prosecutors to invert outcomes. Lives saved become strategic noise. Innovation becomes dangerous independence. Perfect service records become calculated performance, suggesting infiltration. Bureaucratic implementation follows with mathematical precision. The Assessment Bureau receives expanded funding authorization. Personnel allocations increase by 14%. Cogitator networks undergo enhancement. Surveillance capabilities broaden to identify statistical deviance, matching Mordant's profile. Director Assessor Kane presents quarterly projections demonstrating that systematic heresy detection requires tripled budget allocations based on successful prosecution of sophisticated infiltration. The Loyalitas Index undergoes algorithmic revision, incorporating mordant corrections, mathematical penalties applied to excessive consistency, tactical brilliance, or devotional perfection. Regional assessment bureaus receive priority Vox transmissions containing standardized templates for identifying mordant pattern deception through service record analysis. Monthly quota requirements increase to reflect enhanced threat awareness, creating institutional pressure to discover heresy and heroism across Segmentum Solar. The precedent introduces statistical heresy as formal legal category, inverting burden of proof so that mathematical perfection requires defense rather than celebration. Citizens who achieve exceptional loyalty scores face automatic investigation protocols. Officers demonstrating tactical innovation generate presumption of dangerous independence. Shrine keepers whose devotional consistency exceeds diocesan averages undergo doctrinal audits for theatrical performance. The system achieves ultimate institutional cannibalism through policy theater. Converting Mordant into Servitor Unit Tactical 77 declares that human judgment proves less reliable than lobotomized machinery, instructing personnel to abandon initiative and await authorization even when circumstances demand immediate action. The Imperium successfully transforms authentic devotion into evidence of elaborate deception, ensuring that only calculated mediocrity receives protection, while genuine faith becomes criminal liability. The mordant precedent spreads through imperial institutions like Blessed Infection, transforming isolated prosecution into systematic purge. Lex Chronos 8.7 becomes Circular 8.7c, transmitted through Vox networks to every assessment bureau from Solar to Tempestus. The memo's language carries bureaucratic finality. Implement enhanced statistical analysis. Apply mordant corrections. Elevate deviation yields to revised baselines. Within standard. Processing cycles, 1,000 offices synchronize suspicion across the segmentum. The Vostroyan 15th Regiment assembles expecting commendations for their martyred commissar's legacy. Instead, purity seals bloom on assessment clipboards as collective loyalty evaluation commences. Veterans with immaculate records receive red flag designations for predictive perfection. Their consistent excellence now evidence of sophisticated deception. Platoon Sergeant Korsk, who never lost a man in 17 campaigns, achieves a Loyalitas Index of 8.4. and faces immediate reassignment pending doctrinal counseling. Personal reliquaries undergo confiscation to remove confounding variables. The regimental band receives orders to vary hymns irregularly, preventing ritual habituation that suggests theatrical performance. By month's end, the 15th fights at half initiative, waiting for verifications that arrive after tactical windows close. Shrine World Ophelia. 7 faces planetary investigation for excessive devotional output. Orbital cogitator networks detect prayer frequency anomalies, litanies per capita exceeding sector norms by 23.7%, pilgrimage rates suggesting artificially induced religious fervor. Assessment Prime Vex deploys with diocesan audit teams carrying Auspex microphones and devotional calculators, measuring faith like industrial quotas. Sister Superior Cassandra undergoes interrogation for maintaining 17 shrines when regulations specify 12 maximum per district. Her expansion program, designed to serve growing pilgrim populations, becomes evidence of unauthorized ecclesiastical ambition, indicating possible corruption. Forge World, Lucius endures comprehensive efficiency audit after productivity reports trigger mordant pattern analysis. Manufacturing output exceeds projected quotas by 31.2% through process innovations bypassing standard authorization channels. Tech adept Zorian faces prosecution for implementing servo skull modifications without Mechanicus approval. Improvements reducing industrial accidents by 47% become dangerous technical innovation, suggesting heretical knowledge acquisition. Each efficiency gain transforms into evidence of systematic deviation from approved operational doctrine. The cascade operates through quota systems, incentivizing heresy discovery in heroism. Assessment Bureau funding depends on deviation detection rates. Offices must identify minimum 4.7% of reviewed cases as loyalty deviants to maintain personnel allocations and cogitator access. Success metrics reward officials exceeding quotas, creating institutional pressure to discover sophisticated infiltration wherever excellence appears. Director Assessor Kane presents sector-wide projections demonstrating that enhanced surveillance capabilities require tripled budget allocations based on successful mordant pattern prosecutions. The bureaucratic machinery transforms individual prosecutions into systematic purges through mathematical theology. Outstanding service records become calculated performance suggesting long-term infiltration planning. Innovation becomes dangerous independence, indicating compromised judgment. Devotional consistency becomes theatrical behavior designed to manipulate assessment outcomes. The system generates its own momentum through financial incentives rewarding paranoia over discernment, consuming virtue through algorithmic precision. Defensive mediocrity becomes the Imperium's unspoken catechism, a survival tax levied on excellence itself. Citizens learn to calibrate incompetence with mathematical precision, transforming natural ability into calculated liability. The Loyalitas Index creates behavioral incentives that systematically destroy authentic devotion, tactical brilliance, and institutional dedication. Survival demands performance art, enough piety to evade heresy accusations, sufficient imperfection to dodge excessive zeal protocols. Factory supervisor Derek Pell, once flagged for suspicious efficiency, now cultivates deliberate failure. His 23% productivity improvement becomes cautionary lesson requiring correction. He reintroduces calculated inefficiencies, extending break periods by prescribed intervals, reducing feed rates to sector averages, teaching crews to ignore early warning signs of mechanical failure. Pell maintains detailed records of his sabotage, 1 jam per 72 minutes, 1 quality defect per 500 casings, ensuring audit cogitators read human fallibility rather than dangerous competence. His ledger of permissible flaws becomes insurance against accusations of excessive capability. Sister Meridian sets a metronome beneath the altar, pacing devotions at diocesan averages rather than authentic fervor. Her 14-hour prayer vigils triggered investigation. Now she maintains precisely 10.6 hours with randomized interruptions to break pattern recognition algorithms. She varies hymns through purchased rotation schedules, ensuring statistical irregularity while suppressing spontaneous worship. The psychological toll manifests in chronic spiritual numbness, divine love transformed into actuarial calculation, faith reduced to mathematical performance. Citizens develop amateur statistical expertise, navigating the narrow corridor between damnation and suspicion. They target Loyalitas Index scores between 7.6 and 7.9, the mathematical sweet spot avoiding both heresy investigation and excessive zeal protocols. Morning prayers require precise timing. Work performance demands careful calibration. Social interactions undergo self-censorship to prevent displaying knowledge or innovation that might trigger algorithmic flags. Underground economies emerge serving defensive mediocrity requirements. Loyalty consulting services operate in Hive undercities, staffed by former assessment bureau clerks selling statistical salvation. These consultants provide comprehensive behavioral audits, devotional schedules ensuring prayer frequencies remain unremarkable, productivity targets maintaining acceptable inefficiency, social interaction guidelines preventing suspicious competence displays. Advanced services include loyalty insurance, documented evidence of calculated mistakes providing defense against capability accusations. The consultation process involves mathematical precision that would impress tech adepts. Clients receive devotional algorithms, productivity dampening protocols, and variance dice, introducing benign irregularity to behavioral patterns. Former assessors teach credible mediocrity, how to achieve consistent averages without triggering statistical analysis, how to perform faith without feeling it, how to demonstrate measured incompetence while maintaining basic functionality. The psychological toll accumulates like industrial toxins. Genuine believers learn to counterfeit themselves. Natural leaders suppress abilities that once defined their worth. Dedicated servants actively sabotage effectiveness to maintain statistical invisibility. Work becomes theater. Prayer becomes mathematics. Fear replaces devotion as primary motivator. The system records this spiritual degradation as compliance. The Imperium achieves perfect institutional inversion, creating exactly what it claims to prevent: a population of calculating, insincere citizens who perform loyalty rather than experience it, who master the choreography of faith while forgetting its music. The assessment system achieves perfect institutional cannibalism, transforming paranoia from tool into self-replicating virus. With external targets exhausted or practicing defensive mediocrity, the machinery turns inward with mathematical inevitability. The mordant precedent's core logic, excellence indicates deception, applies recursively, ensuring that competent assessors face assessment for their competence. Assessor Prime Vex receives Form 77 Delta through standard channels, crimson priority seals announcing her investigation for obsessive heresy-seeking behavior. Her successful identification of loyalty deviance during the post-mordant cascade triggers algorithmic analysis, revealing statistical deviation, heresy detection rates exceeding sector averages by 12.3%. The charges follow established template. Her expertise becomes evidence of dangerous specialization. Her dedication becomes suspicious obsession. She sits where Mordant once stood, measured by mathematics she helped perfect. Director Assessor Kane faces prosecution for unauthorized legal innovation after creating Mordant pattern detection protocols that became sector doctrine. His precedent-setting success transforms into evidence of result-oriented adjudication and statistical showmanship. Tribunal Assessor Thorne undergoes audit for excessive zeal in procedural enforcement. His prosecutorial victories reframed as obsessive judicial behavior indicating possible corruption. Each official's competence becomes liability under systems designed to punish excellence. The Bureau attempts resolution through the Meta-Loyalitas Index, mathematical models measuring assessor loyalty through zeal coefficients, humility metrics, and variance tolerance ratings. This innovation spawns recursive bureaucracy. Assessment assessors require supervisory auditors who demand oversight synods, creating infinite hierarchical regression. Who assesses the assessors? The system generates meta-departments faster than personnel allocation allows, each layer producing expertise requiring investigation by the next. Mathematical inevitability creates impossible workloads. The Bureau processes 847 loyalty investigations while simultaneously undergoing comprehensive internal audit. Each assessor conducts loyalty reviews while facing individual loyalty review, creating recursive loops where investigators investigate investigators investigating other investigators. Cogitator networks strain under recursive calculations while servo skulls circulate investigation notifications between offices investigating themselves. Processing backlogs accumulate exponentially. Citizens awaiting loyalty trials multiply beyond capacity. 34,000 assessments requiring completion. 67,000 investigations authorized but unassigned due to investigator shortages caused by investigating investigators. The system generates heresy accusations faster than processing allows, creating queues of loyal citizens awaiting punishment for mathematical proof of their loyalty. Resource exhaustion manifests through bureaucratic paralysis. Parchment allocations cannot support infinite documentation requirements. Personnel assignments become impossible when every official requires investigation by officials requiring investigation. The Assessment Bureau achieves perfect institutional gridlock through systematic application of its own principles. The paradox completes its logical circle. Defensive mediocrity spreads through assessment ranks as officials insert deliberate errors to lower zeal coefficients. Real threats pass unnoticed while analysts focus on internal investigations. The machinery designed to ensure imperial loyalty destroys imperial functionality through mathematical precision, consuming effectiveness while generating perfect statistical compliance with destructive protocols. The servitorization process strips away personality while preserving muscle memory and tactical knowledge. The Imperium wastes nothing, even in punishment. Under surgical lights that burn with clinical precision, Commissar Thane Mordaunt ceases to exist at 9:47 hours, Tertius Day. Lobotomy preserves combat reflexes while excising independent thought, transforming devotion into mechanical efficiency. Cognitive implants replace human judgment with algorithmic calculations, processing tactical data without the dangerous burden of conscience. 43 years of faithful service become raw material for inhuman precision. Servitor Unit. Tactical 77 emerges bearing Mordaunt's face but not his soul. The inverted aquila branded on his chest remains visible beneath regulation servitor robes, marking him as loyalty's casualty. Assignment protocols display bureaucratic irony. Tactical 77 serves in the same shrine district he once defended, patrolling corridors where he saved 12,000 lives. His enhanced optics scan for threats with mathematical precision, while his mechanical hands polish the reliquaries he preserved from cultist blades. The system achieves perfect efficiency by removing the humanity that made sacrifice meaningful. His former soldiers of the Vostroyan 15th witness their beloved commissar reduced to clicking servitor components and whirring cogitator fans. They watch the man who led them through fire, who saved their families, calculating firing solutions with inhuman gentleness. Morale reports collapse across the regiment as veterans realize that perfect service earns mechanical conversion rather than honored retirement. The Departamento Munitorum responds with discipline recalibration protocols, rations reduced by 6%, duty shifts extended 1 hour per rotation, devotional drills doubled. The numbers recover on parchment while men move as if drowning in institutional betrayal. The 12,000 refugees Mordaunt preserved during the siege undergo systematic processing as exposure risks. Their survival represents inconvenient evidence of unauthorized heroism requiring administrative resolution. Tribunal Assessor Kane authorizes reassignment to Prometheum reclamation facilities on industrial moons, where toxic fumes consume lungs and cancers without proper names bloom beneath skin like secret alphabets. Most die within standard processing cycles, their deaths eliminating witnesses to procedural violation while maintaining statistical cleanliness in official records. Sister Superior Cassandra, caretaker of the Shrine of Blessed Martyrs, submits formal deposition retracting previous gratitude statements. The document bears her signature but not her words, drafted by tribunal scribes requiring mandatory endorsement. She describes Mordaunt's actions as reckless endangerment of sacred property and procedural violations requiring posthumous condemnation. Her coerced testimony becomes final evidence supporting the verdict's righteousness, erasing inconvenient traces of unauthorized competence. The machine consumes its own heart and calls it efficiency. Tactical 77 performs maintenance between alarms, his mechanical presence serving as warning against excessive devotion. Children learn to fear the clicking servitor, whose branded chest marks him as loyalty's punishment. The Imperium demonstrates ultimate institutional message. Faithfulness leads to lobotomy. Excellence earns mechanical conversion. Heroism results in surgical removal of humanity. The system transforms its greatest servants into mechanical monuments to the price of unauthorized virtue. The Imperium attempts to repair the assessment crisis through bureaucratic multiplication, adding gears to a machine that consumes its own components. The Departamento Munitorum issues Circular 8.7R, Loyalty Measurement Guidelines for Enhanced Precision, distributing revised quotas, updated mathematical formulas, and recalibrated devotion parameters. Each reform maintains the fundamental assumption that faith can be measured, cataloged, and controlled through improved administrative methodology. The premise never changes, only the arithmetic shifts. The Loyalitas Index undergoes comprehensive revision, incorporating false positive mitigation protocols. The acceptable loyalty range expands from 7.3 to 8.1 to 7.1 to 8.3, creating wider margins for statistical variation. Rolling devotion averages replace static measurements, while variance tolerance bands discourage theatrical perfection through mathematical penalties. The algorithmic result proves mathematically inevitable. Reducing false positives increases false negatives proportionally. Genuine cult infiltrators exploit the widened parameters by staging credible mediocrity, while authentic believers with irregular schedules face penalties from moving window calculations they cannot predict or control. Standardization creates bureaucratic fractals of increasing complexity. Assessment bureaus receive uniform interview templates, synchronized processing protocols, and standardized devotional measurement tools. Implementation reveals that standardization itself becomes deviation. Offices following protocols with excessive precision trigger suspicious compliance investigations, while those adapting to local conditions face unauthorized modification charges. The system generates new deviation categories faster than it eliminates existing ones. Excessive consistency of expression penalizes citizens whose confession language remains too stable across audits. The introduction of assessment assessors creates infinite hierarchical regression without resolving fundamental contradictions. These specialized officials investigate loyalty assessor competence through meta-loyaltas calculations, requiring assessment supervisors who demand oversight coordination boards, generating employment faster than the Imperium can train personnel. Each bureaucratic layer produces expertise requiring investigation by subsequent layers, consuming resources while creating recursive investigations that process officials for investigating other officials. Dynamic quotas attempt mathematical balance between institutional paranoia and processing capacity. Bureaus must identify minimum 2.8% loyalty deviance while maintaining maximum 4.3% processing rates to prevent system overload. The mathematics prove impossible. Insufficient paranoia triggers funding reductions. Excessive paranoia creates unmanageable backlogs. Regional directors develop quota gaming strategies, calibrating heresy detection to bureaucratic requirements rather than actual security threats. Reform Committee Alpha 7, chaired by Director Assessor Kane despite facing his own investigation, demonstrates systemic blindness encoded in institutional DNA. Committee membership consists entirely of officials who achieved positions through successful loyalty prosecutions. Minds trained to interpret excellence as evidence of corruption cannot recognize prosecution itself as problematic. Their collective expertise lies in tightening screws, not questioning whether the device should exist. Reform proposals emerge from theological commitment to procedural orthodoxy. Better measurement can resolve problems created by measurement itself. The reforms achieve perfect institutional inversion by treating symptoms while strengthening disease vectors. Enhanced surveillance precision reduces institutional effectiveness. Additional bureaucratic layers consume resources while generating recursive paralysis. Standardized procedures eliminate local adaptation while maintaining central contradictions. The system demonstrates ultimate administrative hubris, believing that improved methodology can resolve fundamental theological errors. Servitor Unit. Tactical 77 polishes a shrine candle with mechanical precision, 3 strokes per second at 0.6 newtons pressure, his subcortical governors maintaining perfect consistency. The inverted aquila branded on his chest catches candlelight through regulation servitor robes, scar tissue gleaming like a metallic prayer, marking flesh that once belonged to Commissar Thane Mordaunt. His cognitive implants calculate optimal wax removal, while muscle memory genuflects at prescribed intervals. The machine has achieved perfect devotional efficiency by excising the soul that made worship meaningful. Beyond this shrine district, the Assessment Bureau continues its galactic procession with industrial persistence. Across 1,000 hives, millions of citizens perform daily calculations, calibrating devotion to statistical requirements, while authentic belief withers like unused muscle. Prayer becomes mathematics, service becomes theater, faith transforms into actuarial science. The Loyalitas. Index processes devotion through blessed cogitators that measure everything except the divine spark the system claims to protect. The ultimate paradox reaches completion through institutional success. In attempting to ensure loyalty through measurement, the system has created exactly the calculating, insincere population it fears. Citizens who once loved the emperor now perform love according to algorithmic specifications. They quote creeds with randomized pauses, misfile on schedule, and flatten their lives to ride the 7.6 to 7.9 plateau. They engineer failings to appear human, mastering choreographed devotion while forgetting the music that once moved their hearts. A religion of tolerances replaces divine love. The machinery continues with mechanical inevitability, processing virtue into vice through blessed calculations. Assessment bureaus stamp loyalty measurements while loyalty dies by degrees. Form storm-blessed 447 sites in archives as Exhibit Tertius, cited, footnoted, drained of blood. The mordant precedent stands in jurists' codices like a gravestone rubbed smooth by use, teaching prosecutors that mathematical proof of innocence constitutes evidence of guilt. In Schola Progenium, across the segmentum, children memorize the Loyalitas Index alongside catechisms, internalizing mathematical faith as theological foundation. Young voices recite prayer frequency coefficients with reverence their ancestors reserved for the emperor's name. They learn that genuine devotion creates statistical anomalies requiring correction, that excellence indicates deception, that survival lies in measured mediocrity. The next generation absorbs twisted logic as natural law, ensuring the system's perpetual self-replication. The Assessment Bureau's motto gleams above every workstation: faith without measure is faith without meaning. The words carry prophetic weight. In measuring faith, the system has indeed drained it of meaning, transforming divine love into statistical data, feeding machines incapable of recognizing what they consume. Tactical 77 completes his maintenance cycle, the servo-skull's picked recorder capturing everything with mechanical precision. The image is clean, the pain is neat, the mathematics hold. The Imperium endures by consuming its own heart, one statistical anomaly at a time, branded flesh testament to an empire that punishes loyalty like heresy.